Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. My name is Sarah Nolan, and I will be your host for tonight's Keep Alberta RCMP telephone town hall. Joining me is the National Police Federation's board directors, Kevin Halwa and Jeff McGowan, both who live in Alberta. Welcome, Kevin and Jeff. Before we begin, let me go over a few basics on how the telephone town hall will run this evening. Right now, there are hundreds of Albertans joining the line, and shortly we will hear from Kevin and Jeff, who will speak about the Alberta RCMP, the proposed police transition, and the future of policing in Alberta. After that, we will open the lines for listeners to ask questions. At any time, if you have a question, all you have to do is press *3 on your phone keypad to indicate that you have a question. An operator will greet you, and at any time during the presentation, you can just press *3 to join the queue to ask your question live. Again, my name is Sarah, and I'm excited to be your host for the National Police Federation's telephone town hall this evening. For those of you who don't know, the National Police Federation is the sole certified bargaining agent for regular members and reservists of the RCMP below the rank of inspector. We have almost 20,000 members across Canada, including about 3,100 members that are proud to serve Alberta. If you would like to know more about the NPF or the Keep Alberta RCMP campaign, please visit our website at www.keepalbertarcmp.ca. Before we begin, let's do a quick phone poll. Please listen to the following options and press the key on your phone that best matches your opinion. So listen carefully and then press the key on your phone that best matches your opinion. The question is, which of the following statements best describes your viewpoint on policing in Alberta? Press 1 if you support keeping the current policing services provided by the RCMP. Press 1 now. Press 2 if you support keeping the Alberta RCMP with improvement. Press 2. Press 3 if you would like to see an Alberta Provincial Police Service. Press 3 now. Again, I'll just repeat the question, and you just push on the telephone keypad to the number that corresponds to what you the option that best matches. Which of the following statements best describes your viewpoint on policing in Alberta? Press 1 if you support keeping the current policing services provided by the Alberta RCMP. Press 2 if you support keeping the RCMP with improvements. Press 3 if you would like to see an Alberta Provincial Police Service. Great. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And just a reminder, if you have any questions at any time during the call, press *3 to be put through to ask your question live. I would like to remind everyone that this is meant to be an informative conversation, and we will not tolerate any inappropriate language on this phone call. Now, before I hand it over, we are from the National Police Federation and not the RCMP, and therefore we are not able to answer questions around operations of the RCMP. We are here on behalf of our Alberta RCMP members who want to continue to serve across this beautiful province. And with that, Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, my name is Kevin Halwa, born and raised in Alberta. Proud to say a fifth-generation Albertan. I've served my entire service with the RCMP in Alberta, starting in Grand Prairie and Fort Vermilion, followed up by Sylvan Lake and Red Deer, and I still make my home in Sylvan Lake, Alberta, and proud to do so. Jeff?
Thank you, Kevin. My name is Jeff McGowan. I joined the force in 1994 out of Nova Scotia and was first posted to Slave Lake in Alberta. I spent 7 years in the Yukon, bounced around a couple of the spots there, and then came back to Alberta. I've served in general duty capacity, general investigation section, emergency response team, where I've been a sniper for full time for about 3 years, Edmonton drug section, gang unit with alert, and then I moved into the board of directors. Thanks for having me, and thank you for attending.
Thank you both very much. And again, before I pass it over to Kevin, at any time throughout this phone call, please press *3 to queue to answer a question. And with that, I will hand it over to our guest to present on the Alberta RCMP and the proposed police transition. Kevin?
Thank you, Sarah. Last year, the Alberta RCMP answered over 800,000 calls for service, up 15% since 2011. They do this through their 3,100 Alberta RCMP members and 113 detachments who serve 300 municipalities and 22 First Nations across the province, including northern, remote, and fly-in communities. The Alberta RCMP have a number of integrated and innovative services, including the Rural Police and Crisis Response Team that responds to mental health calls, which have increased 160% over the last decade. The Alberta RCMP also has the Data to Action initiative that tackles repeat offenders. As a result of this hard work, between 2019 and 2021, the overall crime rate in Alberta fell by 19% in urban areas and 11% in rural areas. With that in mind, let's look at the proposed transition and how we got to where we are today. In 2020, the Government of Alberta's Fair Deal panel recommended replacing the RCMP with a new provincial police service. According to the Fair Deal panel's own research, only 35% of Albertans supported establishing a provincial police service, making it the second least popular idea proposed by only a small margin above separating from the rest of Canada. The province hired PricewaterhouseCoopers to conduct a police transition study, which was released in 2021. While the Government of Alberta promises that a possible new provincial police service wouldn't cost more than the existing model, the transition study detailed the exact opposite and confirmed a provincial police service would in fact cost millions of more each year. The current total annual cost for the RCMP in Alberta, sheriffs in their current form, the RCMP in Alberta and the sheriffs in their current form is $595 million per year, while the government's proposed provincial policing model would cost Albertans $759 million per year. That's an increase of $164 million annually. The province also noted that one-time transition costs would be $371 million. In addition, the province would lose the federal contribution of $185 million annually that covers 30% of the provincial policing costs. This is all assuming the project stays on time and on budget. The math is irrefutable. The new proposed provincial police service will cost Albertans $550 million more at minimum without any proven increase to public safety or significant increase in officers. For the additional costs, only a very minimal number of 56 officers would be added under the province's proposed plan. However, if the province instead invested just the 164 annual increased cost towards the current RCMP model, the province could add 600 additional officers for a total of over 3,700 RCMP officers across Alberta, bolstering policing services for everyone. Jeff?
Thanks, Kevin. So there were a number of unforeseen implications with this potential transition. The report highlights $371 million in transition costs, and this number, of course, is speculative, and the report outlines it as such. It is indicated that further assessment on transition costs is needed to have a fuller understanding of all associated costs. We've seen costs in Surrey, British Columbia's police transition, rise to 4 times the proposed costs due to unforeseen items. Surrey's costs are still rising, and they haven't finished climbing yet. It could be anticipated that the costs in Alberta could double or triple. The estimated costs of a proposed new provincial police service do not account for costs not currently billed to contract partners, such as civil litigation, pensions, survivor benefits, and more. These equate to millions in annual costs. Even in communities with their own police service currently, if a provincial police transition occurs, you will also bear a share of these costs, meaning that communities across Alberta will need to increase property taxes to cover the increased policing cost. The province has still not stated where the money will come from to pay for such a transition. The proposed transition includes only 56 more hiring officers than what the RCMP currently has. It also notes that it expects only 15% of RCMP officers to transfer over. Even so, this would mean the Alberta Provincial Police Service would still need to hire about 2,700 new officers. To recruit this amount, you would clearly need to move outside of Alberta to recruit. All police services across Canada are having challenges recruiting, and there's no answer as to how a new police service would recruit officers. Many police services are offering $20,000 signing bonuses to experienced officers just to be competitive, and costs Alberta did not factor in. In addition, public safety in Alberta will be in jeopardy if officers from Calgary and Edmonton transfer over to a provincial police service, creating gaps in those services and risks to those cities. And if a recruitment happens, where will they be trained? There's no answer to that from the government. While the RCMP currently has a 3.5% hard vacancy rate in Alberta, they have added over 200 officer resources in 2022. The cost of adding additional resources is minimal compared to hiring all new officers from the ground up. If you have any questions so far, I encourage you to press *3 to join the line and ask your question. Now, the government has said that a provincial police service would allow for more local control. However, that's already the case. To be clear, Alberta's Minister of Justice currently sets the priorities, goals, and objectives of the Alberta RCMP. He also sets the budget, service level, and detachment locations. The minister also participates in the selection of the commanding officer, and this authority is protected within the current provincial policing contract. I would also add that the municipalities have the ability to add or have a say in detachment commanders. If the province wants more officers, the minister can fund more positions. It's pretty simple. It's not up to Ottawa to determine the province's local policing needs. That responsibility rests solely with the minister. Amendments to the Alberta Police Act have also made policing committees and RCMP policed communities mandatory. Like non-RCMP policed communities, these committees will provide further governance and input into their local RCMP by establishing local priorities. There has been some commentary that the federal government wants to get out of contract policing. However, this has never been stated by the federal government, not to the RCMP, and not to the province of Alberta or any other province. Kevin?
Thanks, Jeff. Albertans have made it clear that they want to retain the RCMP as their police service. The National Police Federation, through Polaris Strategic Insights, conducted 4 waves of polling in Alberta since 2021, and it has consistently found that only 9% of Albertans support a transition. An Alberta municipalities poll through Trend Research in February of 2023 found that a whopping 67% of Albertans feel replacing the RCMP with the provincial police service will not have an impact on reducing crime. And in the fall of 2022, 100 stakeholder groups and municipalities came together in a call to action supporting retaining the RCMP as Alberta's provincial police service. Some of those 100 municipalities have leaders joining us on the line today, and we thank them for supporting the RCMP members that serve this province selflessly. On the NPF's keepalbertarcmp.ca website, Albertans have sent over 100,000 letters to provincial MLAs demanding that they listen to the majority of Albertans and keep the Alberta RCMP. If you haven't sent a letter yet through our website, I encourage you to visit www.keepalbertarcmp.ca to get involved. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Kevin and Jeff. We will now open the lines for questions. And just a reminder that if you do have a question, please press *3 now to ask your question live. And we will, so we'll go to the lines now, and I will open it up. And I will start with Brenda. Brenda, you have a question. You are now live.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi. I'm happy to be a part of it. And my first thing is I want the RCMP to stay in Alberta. And from what I have seen, so do most of the Albertan people. How can we allow a government to just decide on their own to change it to provincial? And just ignore what Albertans want by keeping the RCMP.
Hi, Brenda. Jeff here.
Hi.
I don't have an answer for you. It has been clear through all of our polling. I think we've done 4 individual polls plus the Fair Deal panel, and I think there's been Leger studies, and they basically or overwhelmingly said they're not, the public is not interested in any sort of transition. I don't know why they're not listening. I think the only way is to express your opinion, I guess, to your local MLA and speak with them and get some answers from them. It's a tough one. You kind of got me on that. I don't know why. It's a good question, and we've often asked different MLAs and politicians why this is the case, and more often than not, we don't get a good answer either. So, I'm sorry. I hope that answers your question. I don't have a good answer for you though.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to remind everyone that if you have a question, just press *3 to queue now, and we will go to our next caller, Sandy. Sandy, you are now live.
Hi,
Sandy.
Hi. I just wanted to know what some of that money could, instead of switching from one force to another, they could just train more RCMP, because they've always served us well. And are they not like Canadian FBI kind of thing? They look after us. They always have. Why change?
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for that great question. And that's a question that we get quite often when we talk to fine folks in Alberta. No matter where we are. And you're 100% right. That money could be put towards hiring new RCMP officers, or additional RCMP officers, I should say. And interestingly, the authority to do that, or the power to do that, already exists in the Provincial Policing Services Agreement that the provincial government has with the Government of Canada. Specifically, it's Article 5 of that agreement, in which the provincial government, the minister, sets the size of the police force using the article. So you're absolutely right. That money could be very easily spent increasing the numbers of RCMP resources, as opposed to going down this rabbit hole of starting something brand new. You're 100% right. It could be. Why they're not doing it, who knows? But it is a question that has been asked many, many times again. And the answer to that, getting it from the government of Alberta, is, well, it's a little bit like asking, the colonel for his 11 herbs and spices. Nobody's been able to quite figure it out why they're going that way. Jeff, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up, Kevin and Sandy, on that. I think it would be probably more prudent to invest the extra money into the justice system or all of the other support services that probably would be, you'd see a greater link to crime. So you're looking at homelessness and mental health and addictions and so on. So instead of actually focusing on the police, because both Kevin and myself, police officers, we've done it for a long time. We know how the justice system works. We know that, we need more judges. We need more courtrooms. We need more, at times, jails for some people. And what we've seen recently is a kind of revolving door justice system. It would be far better, I think, in the long run, to focus probably more on those underlying factors that contribute to crime than the people who are consistently catching and being forced to release those committing the crime. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we'll take our next caller, Janet. Janet, you are now live.
Thanks very much for letting me voice my questions. I very much appreciate and support the RCMP. I would like to know if you are given more resources, where you believe they should be placed to improve the capabilities of the RCMP. And I don't want to be conspiracy, but I'd like to get your perspective on the idea that related to the Sovereignty Act and the reluctance for the United Conservative Party to participate in the federal gun laws do you think that that's where the impetus to take the RCMP and make it a provincial force would be, that the United Conservative government doesn't want to follow the Canadian Criminal Code and follow the new national gun laws?
Thanks for the question, Jan. There's a lot to unpack there. But to the first part of your question, what do we think the best way to improve the RCMP for Albertans is? Well, it's there's not a silver bullet there as far as we just need A or we just need B. It's it's a little bit of everything. Yes, we could use some more policing resources, absolutely, especially in the rural areas. It's no mystery to anyone the vast geographic landscape that we have in Alberta, from corner to corner to corner. And it takes time to get to those places. For example, I won't have the numbers exactly right, but if you were to compare Edmonton and Calgary police services, for example, you would have one police officer to police an area of about 300 square meters. Conversely, however, if you took a RCMP officer in the rural area, that same police officer is looking after about 300 square kilometers. So there's a vast, there's vast distances to cover, and it takes people to get there. That's not to say that the magic pill is to throw a whole bunch of money in policing. As Jeff alluded to before, we also need increases in the Crown prosecutor capacity. We need increases in mental health resources. We need increases in drug addictions counseling, all those sort of things that either prevent people from turning to crime or get them out, keep them to stay out of crime once they are break that cycle. It's a good question. Jeff, do you have any comments on the second part of the question?
Yeah. So just with respect to any of the gun stuff currently coming out of the federal government, the way that the provincial policing contract operates and the way that the responsibilities are divided, the provincial justice minister is the one that basically sets the goals, objectives, and priorities for the provincial police force. Provincial police force in Alberta, obviously, is the RCMP. He has directed that because of resourcing issues, there will not be any push to go and collect or confiscate firearms or anything. I mean, we haven't even seen anything on that front, but I think that they're kind of setting that up. But that doesn't mean, though, that he is directing police anywhere to ignore current or existing laws. Because, to be fair, murder is still illegal. Firing a gun at someone is still illegal. So any time that any of those occurrences happen, the police, irrespective of Calgary City, Edmonton, Lethbridge, RCMP, they're going to follow the law and deal with it that way. That larger issue concerning what I'm assuming you're talking about is the handgun ban and the I guess AR or the OIC that resulted in a whole bunch of firearms being prohibited, I guess, or kind of in a holding pattern. That remains to be seen how that will end up going, only because it's still before the courts and they haven't actually enacted that or done anything through legislation. It's a very tough question, and I'll be quite frank, I'm a gun owner. And when we look at it, and like I said, I've been doing this job since '94, the focus that we currently see has been more on the people who are otherwise law-abiding and not focusing on the criminals. I would, if it were me, focus on the illegal importation and the criminal use of firearms, because that's where we're seeing the big problems. It's a very complicated issue, and we basically want to keep everybody safe, but we need to actually have a good plan to do so. I hope I answered your question. It's a tough one to certainly get into.
Great, thank you. And we will move on to our next caller. And just a reminder to press *3 on your keypad if you do have a question. And our next caller is Barb. Barb, you are live.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I was saying that I live in Strathcona County, and we are currently served, obviously, by the RCMP. And the county, as our mayor and our councilman have already sent a letter to the province indicating we still want to maintain RCMP here. My question is it not possible to have or is it possible to have a referendum of some kind where the provinces can, or that Albertans can vote to keep the service? Because, I know everybody here wants to keep the RCMP. So that's my question.
Thanks, Barb. Are you? I'm assuming that you're referring to a referendum on the provincial side and not the localized Strathcona detachment. Now, Kenny had said that it would go to a referendum. I am unsure if that is the current tack that the current provincial government is planning on taking. We haven't really seen much currently from them. There hasn't been a budget line item. They said that they're still exploring it, although Minister Ellis was directed to create it. We're confused, and we're actually trying to seek some clarification. There has been a lot of comments in that regard where some of the municipalities said, we have it's a good deal for us. Our needs are met. The policing service has been responsive, has been dealing with everything that we asked them to deal with. But if the RCMP is no longer the provincial police force, there will not be an opportunity for any city, town, or smaller municipality to have the RCMP as their force. So that's kind of where that sits.
Thank you. And we will go to our next caller, Barry. Barry, you are now live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for doing this. Hello.
Hi, Barry.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for doing this. My question is it possible? It's my understanding that there's been a community in Alberta that's already opted to go with a provincial police force, and I think it'd be kind of interesting to monitor how things go there, especially in light of the fact of of what happened in Surrey. I'd like to know whether or not people in Surrey aren't second guessing what they've done, especially in light of all the negativity that's arrived as a result of expenses going way above what they thought they were going to go to. Anyway, I think that'd be kind of interesting to do.
Thanks, Barry. And I think what you mean is a municipality looking at moving to a municipal police force, not a provincial police service, up in northern Alberta in the Peace Country there. Those costs are going to have to be tracked and accounted for by that municipality, and it will be big dollars. The estimated costs in that municipality currently estimated $19 million. However, in Surrey, as you alluded to, who's also trying to go through that same transition, the costs were also estimated at $19 million. Those costs there are ballooned to well over $100 million. That's about 400% over budget. They're still not done, and they're still not even close to being finished. I believe their IT costs alone, which is not dependent on the population, their IT costs, I believe, were well over $30 million. So you can quickly see how a $19 million estimate to move to a municipal police service is, it's a little bit far-fetched and a little bit hard to believe. But yeah, you're right. That municipality will need to be to keep very close tabs on their costs because their municipal taxpayers are going to want to know that their money is being spent effectively. Jeff, do you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I just want to add that I know that like the National Police Federation will certainly be watching and seeing what benchmarks are hit or not hit and trying to understand or at least identify where the costs are. Right now, it's it's obviously in its infancy. That's with the city of Grand Prairie. So we'll see what happens there and whether or not they have a very aggressive timeline for this. So it'll be interesting to see how it progresses and what issues come up because, as we all know, anything, that comes up, it's subject to Murphy's Law, right? The first casualty of war is always the plan. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
And just a reminder again to everyone listening that if you do have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad, and we will go to our next caller, Robert. Robert, you are live.
Thank you. Good evening. I fully support the RCMP. I guess what I am wondering, I understand the direction proposed by the UCP. However, I don't hear a lot from the other political parties. Have they all commented either for or followed suit with the UCP in their direction? If you could comment.
Thanks, Robert. That's a really great question, and thanks very much for your support of the RCMP. It's great to hear. And not surprising given the polling results that we've had over the last couple of years. I encourage you to reach out to your MLA and ask them about that. But I can tell you that the other major party in the province, the NDP, has come out publicly and said several times that they are not in support of moving to a provincial police service and wants to keep the RCMP as the provincial police service of choice in the province of Alberta. So, be that, I'll just leave that with you and you can do your own research on your own candidate and your riding as an election approaches.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to our next caller, Mary. Mary, you are now live.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi there. Am I on or?
Yep.
Yes,
Hi,
you're
Mary.
on. Hi, Mary. Yeah.
Okay. I'm from Grand Prairie, and I do believe that they were talking about northern Alberta that opt to have the RCMP out. And I just wanted clarified that it was not the citizens of Grand Prairie that voted on that. That was City Council, and which I think is wrong. And we do have a petition going around asking them, the city, to make sure that we do get a vote. So how it'll turn out, I don't know. But anyone I talk to wants the RCMP left here. So I think you guys do a great job.
Thank you, Mary. Well, I had actually appeared before City Council when they were on that marathon decision. It was clear that they had their minds were made up in that case, and there was a pretty vocal group of citizens that did show up and were not in support of it, which was pretty interesting to see. I'm not sure how many people normally go to Grand Prairie City Council meetings, but it was pretty interesting to see. But I guess the only way is to speak with with the city councilors and try and get some sort of clarification. I'm not sure where it came from. There were, as with anything, especially when you're dealing with police work, because nobody calls the police when they're happy, believe me. It's always when, some bad things are happening. So it's hard to, I think most people kind of just accept policing as a, I mean, how do I want to say? I mean, it's certainly a necessary service, and if you're not hearing generally from the public, it means that most things were going well. So we haven't heard a lot of complaints out of there, and I think perhaps the city council had something different in mind. But I think ultimately it's going to have to be up to the city council to clarify or answer any of those questions. But as it stands now, it sounds like the decision has been made, and they're going to be proceeding this way. So hopefully, you'll be able to get some answers, because we were not.
Right, and I'll just remind everyone again that if you do have a question, just press *3 now to enter the queue, and we will go to our next caller, Chuck. Chuck, you are now live. Hi, Chuck.
Yes, hi. I was just wondering what the jurisdiction for the sheriffs are instead of the RCMP.
Thanks for that, Chuck. And that's a common question, because most people, unless you're are in the business of policing, wouldn't necessarily recognize the difference between the sheriffs and the RCMP or any other police service, for that matter, in the province. While the RCMP have jurisdiction across the country, for starters, the sheriffs have jurisdiction within the province, and that's where it ends. There's also vast differences in the amount of training. The RCMP being much higher trained, longer trained, with special skill sets in many of the applications and positions that they take. The sheriffs, you'll often see them doing prisoner transport, courtroom security, and those sort of things. Not really investigational type things. The sheriffs aren't going to be investigating, your stolen vehicle or anything like that. Those sort of things will be left to the police officers, be it whether it be the Mounties or a municipal police officer within the province. I hope that answers your question, Jeff. Unless Jeff, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add so the sheriffs, there's different authorities that are granted to police and peace officers, and the sheriffs do not have the same authorities that the RCMP or a municipal police force would have within the province of Alberta at this time. That could potentially change, but with that comes, some changes in legislation or authorities granted by the Justice Minister. In addition to that, one of the main differences is oversight. Currently, the sheriffs don't have any oversight. So if they end up, let's say, in a situation or scenario where they end up shooting and killing someone with RCMP or Calgary or Edmonton, Lethbridge, whatever, ACERT is the body that is responsible. So we all are, or hopefully you're familiar with ACERT. They're excellent. They're probably the gold standard when it comes to police oversight bodies. Currently, the sheriffs don't fall under that. That would require a change. In addition to that, there's a different kind of public complaint system. So it's different, and they have their responsibilities, and the RCMP, as with Calgary or Lethbridge or what have you, have the style of responsibility. So hopefully that kind of answered your question.
Right, and we will go to our next caller, and I'll just remind everyone, if you have a question, just press *3 now on your keypad, and we'll go to Karen. Karen, you are now live.
Hello. I was just wondering, it's not going to cost any less to get another police force in, and the RCMP seem to be doing a really good job. Is this the problem with theft and vandalism and whatever? Is that not economically related? Is that not, we've gone to an economic downfall, so stuff happens? You can't always get under all of that. I think you guys are doing a wonderful job. I've had the pleasure of meeting a few of you. Thank you very much for your service.
Well, thanks, Karen. And it's always great to talk to nice people like you that recognize our member service. And I want to tell you, they certainly appreciate your support. Great question. Why the problem wants to move to to provincial police service, it's beyond me. I've been scratching my head about it, for the last couple of years here now, and I've yet to come up with a good answer. At the end of the day, to make such a move, it's either going to be cheaper or better, and the proposed plan is neither. As a matter of fact, it is much, much more expensive to do it. And there's no evidence to suggest the provincial police service would be any better at all. Can there be other things done? It's absolutely, and like we talked about already. Policing is just one piece of the criminal justice wheel that needs to be all rolling in the same direction. So, do we need a little bit more police? Absolutely. Do we need a little bit more crown prosecutors? Yep, absolutely. Do we need some more mental health resources and drug addictions, counseling, and that sort of thing? Absolutely. All of those things we need pulling in the right direction. But like I said, the plan that's proposed is neither suggested to be better or cheaper. So yeah, it's a really good question, Ken. Jeff, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I do agree, Karen, that probably the underlying issue that we see with a lot of crime tends to be on the socioeconomic level, and that's where we would probably see the best results if you were to take and earmark that money to, instead of changing the stripe on the leg with a new police force, focusing perhaps on some of those societal issues and supports that would kind of prevent people from potentially getting into criminality, to be able to, have a good, strong economy. There's lots of things that could be done that would likely be, you'd see better impact or better effect than wholesale change of a police service. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'll just remind everyone, if you have a question, just press *3, and we'll go to our next caller, Scott. Scott, you are now live.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, hi, thanks. Thanks for doing this. I've seen a lot recently about sheriffs and more sheriff deployments and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that's just a thinly veiled way of doing a provincial police service? And you just talked through a bunch of issues with the differences in training and all that stuff. And how does that even work for Alberta if they're less trained and all that kind of stuff? So thank you.
Well, thanks, Scott. That's an excellent question. I guess my first question would be, where did those sheriffs come from? Obviously, they're being redeployed from somewhere else. So I can tell you that anything in the law enforcement community is screaming for people. If anybody out there is looking to join the police force, now is the time to do it. And I would say that they would have to redeploy some of those people away from either court security, prisoner transfers, or some of their traffic duties. Do I think that it's a backdoor approach, I guess, into a provincial police force? Maybe. I don't want to be overly cynical about it, but the more simple answer would be for the justice minister to use the provincial policing agreement and tell the commanding officer, let's say, I want 100 new RCMP officers because I want to deploy them around the province in different spots, which, as we all are aware, there has been issues with, rural crime is front of mind for a lot of people. We understand that the logistics of traveling, if you're in Slave Lake, part of your area you're responsible for is Smith, Alberta. So that's 60 clicks away. It might be Fawcett. You might be a little bit further into the bush. There's all sorts of different spots. So it's going to impact your response time. Will having more people on the ground improve that? Maybe. Certainly wouldn't be detrimental to it. But you can see that with the deploying of the sheriffs to only Calgary and Edmonton, which I think is fine, but even Calgary and Edmonton have trouble recruiting and attracting enough people to get in there, which is why they went with sheriffs right off the bat. Like I said, I don't want to be overly cynical about it, but to me it seems kind of a backwards way to improve or fix public safety by bringing in people, like basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. It would be better to just create the new positions, and because, let's say with the RCMP as a provincial police force or service, you have a situation where you put through a lot of recruits and you can earmark them for different areas. So the way the contract works is the RCMP has a year to provide those extra bodies that the justice minister demands. That's how that kind of works. So to me, it's probably a far more simple solution to go that route where you have that kind of known, trained commodity, and you're able to put them into, your areas of need. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And we will now go to Ron. Ron, you are now live.
Hi, thanks. Am I on? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. My question, I'm hoping, is straightforward. The one thing that I don't understand about this proposed provincial police service is the cost difference. The way I understand it, the RCMP, some of the RCMP costs are covered by Ottawa. So how is it that we can make up that difference here in the province if we were to introduce a completely new police force that will obviously not have those cost savings?
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate that question. You're right. Under the current provincial policing service agreement, and again, that is the legal contract between the province of Alberta and the federal government of Canada. Under that agreement, the federal government agrees to pay 30% of the provincial policing costs for the province of Alberta. The 30%. In 2022, that worked out to about $188 million. That's in perpetuity. So as you and I and everyone else on the line has seen the costs in their home go up, whether it be for their gas or their water bill or whatever the case is, costs for things go up. It doesn't matter how much the costs for policing go up, that 30% continues to be paid by the federal government in subsidy for the provincial policing budget, which is fantastic. That's 30% that the taxpayers of Alberta don't have to pay. If the province decided to pull the pin on a provincial police service, that 30% subsidy is gone, never to return. That's hundreds of millions of dollars each and every year that will now need to come from your pocket and my pocket as taxpayers to make up the difference. That's money that can be spent on other things in the province, like healthcare, streets, roads, schools, all those sort of things, and some of the things that I suggested before that will actually have a impact on the criminal justice system, and you'll actually make things a little better. So hopefully that answers your question, Ron. And I thank you for that question. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And we are coming up on to the hour. We do have a lot of questions. So we will just take one more question and then we will wrap it up. So I will turn it over to Dana. Dana, you are now live.
Hi there. Yeah, I was just curious on if we do a provincial police force, what is the protocol for any kind of suspicious or misbehavior from the police force themselves? So are we going to keep having the police the police? So it's usually a lot of retired or police coming up on retirement that investigate all the other circumstances. The problem with that is a lot of all these officers, they know each other. So it's fairly biased coming right out of the gate. So just curious if we're going to have the police police the police. And if so, what is the plan? Yeah, that's where I'll end my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Well, I would expect that the plan would remain the same and you would still be with ACERT. So the issue with any sort of police oversight, especially, like, it depends on what it is you're looking at. So there have been within various RCMP, like I know from British Columbia or, you know, in different provinces, anti-corruption units, there would be stuff like that. We haven't had that here because ACERT is the one that takes it over. Now, the issue, of course, is, and we've heard it, where people have, and it started originally with the SIU a long time ago in Ontario. So that was I think it was the Special Investigations Unit, and the IIO in BC had done the same thing where they didn't want ex-police officers in there, or if they did, they wanted to have people who were outside of policing for 5 years. The problem with that is if you ended up bringing in people to basically investigate criminal behavior or homicides, and remember, because your suspect, as it were, would or could be a police officer, the expectation is extremely high that it's going to be done correctly. The problem is you don't get to learn how to investigate a homicide unless you actually investigate homicides. So the way that ACERT here works, and again, I would probably say it's the gold standard for it. Obviously, we deal a lot with ACERT because there's lots of incidents where they're involved, but they have ex-police officers, they have currently serving police officers from various police forces seconded over, but those guys and girls are the ones that simply conduct the investigation. They collect the evidence, the information, and they put it together, and that package is then provided to an independent, basically civilian lawyer, usually a lawyer that worked out of the Crown's office that would have experience dealing with crimes and prosecutions. That is your check. So you can ensure that the investigation is done properly. You can ensure then that it's being reviewed by an independent person, because the director of ACERT is not a police officer, hasn't been a police officer. And the only way that ACERT gets involved is if the director of law enforcement, so again, a civilian position within the government, they get notified and then they dispatch ACERT to conduct the investigation. So there isn't any way that you can screen out of it. I know that you're never going to be able to get rid of people's concern or bias, or from the public, they're going to believe that, wow, they're all in the same boat. All I can tell you is it's not true. And if if you end up seeing any of the investigations, and ACERT has charged and at times convicted police officers with crimes, you can see that it does work. I think it's pretty good, and I think it instills a lot of confidence in the public. So I hope that answered your question.
Great. Well, thank you, Kevin and Jeff. We are unfortunately out of time for this evening, and I do want to thank everyone for all of your questions and participating tonight on our telephone town hall. We did have many questions in the queue that we were unfortunately unable to get to in time. So right after the call ends, you will be offered to leave a voice message. So if we did not get to your question this evening, I really do encourage you to leave your question in the voicemail, and we will pick it up and answer it. Thank you, everyone, so much, and have a great evening. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.